Okay. I would like to apologize for being a few minutes late and just call to order the January 31st meeting of the Elderly Nutrition Task Force. And we have a very limited agenda today, but I'm hoping we can spend a lot of time discussing our final recommendations. But before I do, I just want to turn it over to my co-chair, Representative Gilchrist, for any opening remarks.
I just want to thank everyone for their time and coming together to work on this over the last few months, and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much, Representative. And I don't see our rankings on the task force. So with that, the next item of business is approval of minutes from our November 29th and December 19th. Sounds like we were deficient one of those. Approval minutes from those meetings. Is there any discussion? Actually, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Representative Gilchrist. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Aaron. Any discussion of the minutes? Okay, no discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. All right. So at that point, now we get into the meat of things, which is a discussion of final recommendations. I have, gone through the minutes of the last meeting, and also, I want to thank the associations represented here and the department for thoughtful input on a number of things that we can do. And I just also want to say that I think it's important to acknowledge that things seem to be getting better. We've, among other things, the department has helpfully changed the thresholds, I understand it, for allowing funds to be expended to go from 75% down to 50%. And hopefully that is making things easier. We've also had a number of issues directly from the service providers that also seem to be getting streamlined. And I want to thank all the stakeholders represented on the task force for bringing out a number of issues and for helping us see those problems. So I am having a momentary technical issue while I'm trying to share what I took away as potential next steps. And obviously, this is my quick and dirty thoughts as a co-chair of the task force, but I'm also willing to can have a conversation about each item and see where there are consensus items and where there aren't. And if we're able to reach a consensus today in the allotted time, that will be it. If not, we can decide on potential next steps. And if you just bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to mute myself and I'll be back momentarily. I know the suspense is killing everybody and working to address a technical issue. We'll hopefully have that momentarily. Okay, well, I'm going to stop wasting your time then and just go straight to things that I'm having trouble with the screen share and the application. But I'll go through the items that I would like to respectfully suggest the members we can consider. So the first item on my list is codifying that requirement that I just mentioned, the requirement that AAAs can seek additional funding from the State Unit on Aging at the moment of a 50% expenditure rather than a 75%. And then adding to that the State Unit on Aging provide payment within 30 days when that's possible. Is there any discussion on item 1?
Senator, the only thing that I'm just wondering if we can put, I think that the discussion point, at least from my perspective, is that we want to reach 25% to ensure that the result and outcomes are met. Is there a way that we can add in language that 25% will be reviewed at the 12-month mark or on an annual basis related to feasibility? Because I mean, that again, I think that's where we want to land.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think that we got sort of comments back from the SUA that 25% didn't seem immediately feasible. We did get that feedback back. What we could do, if that's helpful, is note that, make an ongoing requirement to ADS to report to the legislature on that 25% threshold. We could do that. Would that, I don't know. Would that work for you, Bill? And is that something that Aaron, you would be amenable to?
Yeah, I think that
Why not?
some kind of look at it would be agreeable to me.
I mean, from our perspective, if it's in a recommendation, it's certainly something we can look at.
Okay. Chandra, could you pull that down, if you don't mind?
So, Senator, I have a comment on the 30 days.
Yes.
So I think 30 days should be the norm. That's what is in our contract language. I think we should define, if possible, what that means. I think that 30 days should actually be the norm, and anything beyond that should be any extenuating circumstances.
So I guess I mean, we did. I hear you. I think we did get enough. There's some questions about whether or not that's possible if the funds aren't available. So I think that's the sort of the crutch of things is the funding available or not. We can write that, but but there needs to be some sort of exit provision. So yes, I mean, I think we could potentially do that, Leanna. I think sort of we would need perhaps a little bit
Right,
of
so then, yeah, I think we should say that. So if the money is available, it's come from the federal government, we have it in-house, meaning in-state. Our contract says that we should be paid within 30 days. That should be the normal procedure. When possible, if possible, kind of lends itself to a lot of other possibilities
Yeah.
as to why we can't get paid in the 30 days. So if we narrow it down, I think that would be better for providers.
Okay. Marie?
I just wanted to note that there are two different stopping points here, and I just want to be clear and transparent. The first is upon request, whether it be 50 or 25%, and Bill, I thank you for bringing that up. I do think it's something that needs to be reviewed because 50% may or may not be the right percentage. But once we request additional payments, we have to wait until we have expended 50% to request it. Then, according to our contract that was given to us by the SUA, they have 45 days to pay us, to pay the AAA. So I hear you, Senator Lesser, saying that perhaps we should look at that from 30 days. But once we get paid, we have to then turn around and write a check and get the payment to CRT or any of the ENP providers. So I just want to be clear that there are two stopping points. I think the AAAs have all agreed to look at our internal workflows, and that's why we're hoping that we're going to be able to use Grantee Gateway. We'll have that information. Your invoice will be in an appropriate time for us to get that payment made. We're also looking at possibilities of electronic funds transfers rather than checks, because we all know that the checks could take 2 weeks, could get lost, could whatever happens to them. So looking at other efficiencies, but I just did want to clarify that we have to wait until the money comes from the State Unit on Aging to us before we can turn around and write that check to the EMP.
So can I ask a question of Erin? If the money is at the state, you have 45 days. Does it typically take you that long to actually make a payment? And if so, are there any kind of streamlining that we can do to make that, to advance that timeline?
The streamlining is something we are absolutely working on. It is our stated goal, and we are working with fiscal very hard to get payments out much quicker than that. 45 days, as Marie mentioned, is what's in the contract. We are working very hard to streamline some of these things. That is our ultimate goal, is to get them out quite a bit faster.
Right now, so is the requirement, Aaron, right now that you get it out within 40 days of the request by the AAA?
It's,
Or what?
yes, 45 days from the date of request from the AAA.
But you're not, okay. So, and if we switch that to 30 days,
That goes into contract revisions and our fiscal department, the ADS fiscal department. So I can't I can't say what the impact would be.
But we can make the recommendation, right?
and then if you're not able, if you or the AAAs are not able to, you don't have the funding, you're not able to do it, what happens at that juncture? Right, currently, under current law.
If the funds aren't there, we just have to wait until the funds come in to be able to pay it out.
Yeah. All right. So the first, if we maybe we break this into two, to Marie's recommendation, move it to two different bullet points. The first would be codifying the 50% threshold and require an ADS recommendation on the feasibility of going to 25% to the human services chairs. The second one would be going from 45 days to 30 days for payment from the State Unit on Aging to the AAAs, and then also require that for in contracts from the AAAs to the to the
Providers.
providers, yeah. And
Yep.
then just acknowledge that, that shall be the law, except when precluded by lack of funds or something. Is that, are folks okay with those two provisions?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
We could have a formal, perhaps vote on the end when we've digested everything. All right, so then the third, so the second element that, or the third thing that I would suggest would be to require ADS and AAAs to report to the Human Services chairs on progress streamlining the contracting process, including via Form 5. I know that it's difficult to legislate forms, but I know that this was a conversation element that we've discussed previously. Is that something that folks would welcome?
Mhm.
Senator Lester, I just want to clarify, what the Form 5 is different from the contracting process. So I just want to make sure that
yes.
I understand what we're asking, because Form 5 is data collection, contracting is a different piece.
Right. So I'm sorry, streamlining the contracting process and streamlining Form 5.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Forgive me on that. Anybody opposed to that element? Or have, I don't see any hands. Okay.
Joey, can I just have one question?
Of course.
Can we add maybe to prepare a initial plan and then to report on the progress? Could do an initial assessment of what the streamlining could be, and then to report on the progress and implementing whatever recommendations or whatever comes out of the assessment.
Sure. That would be, I mean,
Because they're going to report, there should be an assessment of how they can streamline recommendations on what they're going to work on, and then reporting on what they're going to work on from what they have found that could be improved upon.
okay. You could develop a plan on report on compliance or progress in compliance.
So do an assessment, make recommendations for process improvements, and then report on the implementation of process improvements, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's another element that hasn't really been talked about, but this is again sort of about streamlining the administration of the. Well, I guess before we go on, any other discussion on what Lena just said? Okay. So then the third element that I'd like to discuss is about when there are changes in the administration of nutrition within a region, require notification to legislative delegation and the chief elected officials when there is a material change in service, or and then just require the completion of a continuity of effort plan with input from local electeds and stakeholders, just making sure that we don't have gaps in service delivery. And this would only come into play when there is a material change or when a service provider is changed.
Mm-hmm. I think
And
that makes sense.
any discussion? Any other?
Everybody
does not think of
what would constitute, a material change in service levels? We're talking about maybe a day being reduced, something along those lines.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of pitching it to you. You tell me. I think And we also, I mean, this is a recommendation that could go to the Human Services Committee, so we don't necessarily need to answer that question at this juncture, or we could if you want to. I don't think there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer there.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no, I think it definitely makes sense, to make these kind of notifications and build awareness.
Um, okay. Any other comments? Okay, great. And then we can go to the next one then. And this is a more complicated question. It was really helpful to hear about Marie's work on this, but to ask Aging CT to make the grantee gateway for all AAAs. And I guess the part that we need help with is understanding how we're going to fund that. And Marie, I don't know if I can put you on the spot here, but love your input on that. Thoughts?
Certainly, we're waiting. OPM had thought that they would have decisions made by the end of January. Those decisions, I checked the portal this morning. They have still not announced the awardees for the OPM bond funding to nonprofit organizations. We are extremely hopeful. The application was completed and comprehensive, and I think we will know as soon as OPM releases the list of awardees.
Okay. So what we could do there, would it make sense to ask ask OPM to fund grantee? Now, the issue, I'm trying to remember, the issue before was that whether or not this needed to go through a competitive bid. Is that, I think that was ADS's concern. Is there anything that would prevent us from just recommending to OPM that they fund it?
Well, maybe we fund technology that supports streamlining the process, because we are going to go to bid and see. We believe that Grantee Gateway has the best chance of success because it's specific to Connecticut. Everything else is just national databases that do not meet the Connecticut specific requirements. But we will be doing an RFP and a bid process to make sure that we're getting the best value for streamlining the process. So instead of calling out Grantee Gateway, maybe just asking Aging CT to take advantage of any and all funding for technology, and asking OPM to fund a technology resource for grant databases.
Yeah.
Is this money that you had put in for expansion for your AAA? Because I don't know that you didn't put this money in to expand to the other AAAs, right?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Lena. I applied for the funding on behalf of the association for all 5 of us.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Does
That was my
answer your
question.
question? Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there were some suggestions. Okay, so are we okay? So here's what I have from Marie, and I'm hopefully paraphrasing you correctly. I'm suggesting that we ask OPM to fund technology to streamline the process for grant data, to streamline the process for grant databases, like, parentheses, like Grant Gateway, but not, we wouldn't include that in that name in the recommendations. And then we would ask Aging CT to take advantage of any and all funding there.
Absolutely. This way, we're not specifically calling out one product. We will still go through the formal bid process and find the best product for our future.
Okay. Next is a political one, asking the Human Services chairs to contact our congressional delegation requesting assistance in understanding Older Americans Act funding and reducing, and also requesting their assistance, reducing delays, and request an increase in federal funding. And there were a lot of requests on our federal colleagues, and although I understand, that some of you can lobby and others can't for a variety of reasons. As far as I know, there's no restriction on Representative Gilchrist and myself. We can do whatever we want. So I know that not everyone may be able to weigh in on this item, but I figured I would open it up if anybody wants to comment.
I think it's an excellent recommendation.
What it's worth, we are very fortunate here in Connecticut that our legislative delegation is incredibly responsive and very well educated as to the issue. So it will certainly not be any matter of hard sell whatsoever. But the more folks they hear it from, certainly the better.
Terrific. All right. So next, there was conversation, and this I got two at once. We got one question was about SNAP enrollment, and I know this comes up into contention with, we have two different goals. We're trying to streamline the program, but also maximize funding. And so here the program's a little bit in tension. Which do we do here? So I would love guidance to the best we can on ways to maximize SNAP availability for participants. Do members have ideas about how to best to do that? Because this one will need to lean on you more.
I would say that I think and I know we talked about this, but maybe I don't know if it becomes a recommendation or outgrowth, but gathering the current data.
Yeah.
I know that in our case, we have those data elements related to the participants on the congregate in the Meals on Wheels. It's just a matter of gathering it and analyzing it. I know CRT has a database as well. And I think it's just the EMPs coming together to determine, how much of it is not being maximized.
Okay.
I think we need to have a baseline of how many participants are on SNAP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize because I know that at the last task force meeting, I did say that we would go back and kind of cross-check to see the folks that are on the ENP program compared to how many of them also are on SNAP. But Bill and I can certainly get you that information from the CAP agencies before you submit these recommendations.
Okay. And so we could require an annual reporting by the AAAs, the State Unit on Aging, on SNAP enrollment, and then also require reporting from State Unit on Aging to the Human Services Committee on the same. Does that make sense?
I think reporting, and kind of efforts to actually get folks, which would be in the reporting, but that would encourage folks to get on SNAP or help them to get on SNAP.
I do just want to make a distinction that not every elderly nutrition provider is also a community action agency. So some of these ENPs will not have that information, and nor does the State Unit on Aging have that information. So how that's collected may be a little bit more difficult, but
Right.
to
No,
make that distinction.
You could there's no restriction on surveying people, right? Or I don't know I don't know.
well, I think that the AAAs, I think it's more with the AAAs, yes, so you don't have SNAP, but what are you doing, if anything, and if you could do anything, to be able to help seniors that are eligible, which most would be, I guess, to go on SNAP? So what are the efforts to kind of expand SNAP in those communities?
Yeah. I think we have to keep in mind that the AAAs have a half-time person dedicated to the nutrition program. And that half-time person is responsible for doing the intakes and the nutrition assessments, and entering all that data on the assessment piece into the federal database called WellSky. I don't know that we have the staffing. That is why, Senator Lesser, we fought so hard to get service navigators, because we are seeing people come through with nutritional risk scores of 5, which show a very high risk, and we're capturing that information and doing nothing to support them. So that is precisely why we asked for service navigators at each of the AAA. And we will continue to ask for additional staffing because, again, in my agency, about 2,400 clients run through the nutrition programs a year and just to go out and survey. And remember, these are older individuals, especially in the homebound programs where there's cognitive issues. You're not going to walk in and do a 3-minute survey and walk out. It's going to take time and you've got to address the issues. So we do appreciate, I think one of the important pieces of this is making sure that the AAAs have staff levels of service navigators who can respond to nutritional needs and make sure that the individual is getting, taking advantage of all programs. The other piece of this is SNAP is not in our database, so it's only going to be self-reported. We still then have to find a way to confirm whether or not they have SNAP, which is a completely different system than what the AAAs are currently working in, and then help them with that application. It all can be done. I agree it should be part of the recommendations, but I just want to make it clear that resources are needed to be able to do a SNAP application. You're going to spend 30 minutes with the consumer for sure.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that. And is there you said 30 minutes in terms of enrollment and verification, or just a verification?
Verification
you have
and
to-
application assistance, helping the individual complete the application for SNAP. And then it gets submitted to DSS, and then we wait and typically have to follow up and clarify any additional information that's needed and confirm whether or not the person is eligible and go back to that client.
Yeah, so I just want to make a recommendation. I totally appreciate that, Marie, but the CAP agencies do the outreach for SNAP, and the CAP agencies have the employees that take the application. So perhaps it's just a meeting with the CAP agency to coordinate a referral, and the CAP agencies can take it from there. For the most part.
I think it's a multi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, not all CAP agencies. In my region, I don't have CAP agencies, Lena, who are part of the nutrition program, just to. So yes, it would
No,
be.
but they serve your area. So they're the CAP agencies that you go to for these kind of services. So whatever that CAP agency is, all you have to do, what you would have to do, set up a meeting and just some kind of referral service. And that's what the CAP agencies do. So they'll be able to help you with that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we've tried that in the past, Lena. We'll try again.
And I was just adding in there, I think what we're hearing here is that it's a multi-pronged approach, and that we all, try to screen people for whatever they're eligible for. So I know when we're meeting with people, they might be SNAP eligible. They're probably Medicare Savings Program eligible. They're all of those other things that save them money in all different ways so that they can, have more funds available to buy nutritious foods. So I love that it came up during this look at through the Nutrition Task Force. And I think that it's, enlightening for all of us to keep that top of mind to diversify our seniors' way of accessing nutrition.
One thing that came to mind as Marie was talking, I'm gonna, because I really think we do need a baseline. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity to do a data match with DSS's, with DSS's portal.
Yeah.
To just give us overall, again, we're operating on conjecture that this is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had that, we have something very similar with our fuel assistance program, where it runs through and, determines if they're already a DSS recipient. It seems to me, maybe that could be something that could be done. We have the data that can be matched with DSS's database, and then at least on the aggregate, say this is what percentage of these participants are on SNAP. It doesn't have to give any individual, just give us a number.
You can ask them.
I
Okay.
was just going to just quickly add to, while we're on the topic of other ways to address food insecurity, looking at this from a root cause approach might be very appropriate and helpful. When we look at SNAP and we talk about SNAP as an opportunity to, enhance the ability of older adults to get food, we are assuming that it's financial. It may be frailty, it may be transportation, it may be language, it may be literacy. And so I think it would be worthwhile to look at this from what is it in particular that is creating this issue? You know, there may be some very, God, I hate to say low-hanging fruit, but I will anyway. There may be other opportunities to address food insecurity that are not necessarily based on, you know, financial means. And there are likely other ways to address these social determinants of health that may exist completely outside of the elderly nutrition program. And wouldn't that be a smart way to reduce the stress on a program like this with its finite resources?
Well, so what would those other ways look like?
So for example, if we invested in a root cause analysis and looked at why people are not scoring high enough on their nutritional risk, what is it that is creating the issue? For example, under our other Older Americans Act funding, we can pay for programs that shop for people, that create food pantries, that provide funding for transportation services to get people to the store. You know, there are lots of other ways to address access to food if it is not an inherent issue of the cooking and preparation of said food. So I would just say that there are lots of ways to get at this, and perhaps one of the recommendations is to look at you know, the folks that are in the elderly nutrition program. Are there other ways we can be serving them in order to spread the risk around, and so that elderly nutrition program is legitimately for folks who really need it and who have no other options in which to get it. Again, as the population continues to age, and I think this task force has already come to grips with the fact that no amount of state funding or federal funding is really going to keep pace with the need. It just feels like we should be looking at other ways to address food insecurity that doesn't necessarily mean the elderly nutrition programs as we know them today.
Okay, so what I would suggest there is that it's possible, and I know that we can agree on a number of. So as I understand our charge, I think we can make a recommendation to the Human Services Committee on a bunch of things, and then also to you know, that could potentially be included in legislation. I think we have an opportunity to do that. And I think we could also have, in addition to specific bullet points, perhaps we can also have additional areas that of interest to the committee. So we could talk about, you know, potentially exploring root cause analysis. I don't know at this point if that's something we want, you know, who would be doing it, how would that, you know, what would be the extent of that, how much funding would we recommend? All of that seems a little no at this point. So I'm not trying to dismiss in any way the importance of that. Obviously,
Matt, you might be going in and out. I don't know. Are other folks or system?
Yes.
consider having it at the end. So as a also noted.
Matt, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Okay.
I think you're in.
No comments on that. All right. So then the
No, Matt, can you hear me?
next big thing that I think we should talk about.
Matt?
We had a request to just provide a big state appropriation. I know we do provide some state funding.
Is everybody else losing audio?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, and I just text Senator Lesser to let him know we're struggling. So I think he
We can
now.
respond. We can
Yeah.
let you- Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It appears they're logging out and logging back in. No, I missed that entire thing. Then he couldn't hear us. Yeah, responding. Okay.
I'm in the legislative office building where apparently there's no oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We did not hear though that whole final like thing you said when then you said, "Oh, I guess no response." We didn't hear you.
Oof, I wasn't trying to be snotty about it. I was just
No, you
trying to
weren't.
figure-
Oh, we know.
All right. Thank you, Representative, for saving the task force. All right. So, no, what I was suggesting is I think that the point about the root cause analysis was really helpful. I'm wondering though, because I just thinking here have a whole lot of questions about what that would look like and what its scope would be, and you know, it could be funded at a number of different levels. Whether that's something we want to have as a clear recommendation or an area for further exploration. You know, and if this is a report that we send to the Human Services Committee, we could then choose to, you know, this will be part of the conversation going forward, but it wouldn't be a specific directive one way or the other, because I don't know, you know, do we ask each elderly nutrition provider to do that for each of their clients? You know, that probably seems a little much, but like, what is the scope? You know, I'm seeing Marie like shaking your head, but I don't know what that would look like. And that's what I'm sort of wondering.
Senator, I
Oh.
just feel like we're getting this information from the clients on intake. They are
Yeah.
already telling us. If they're telling us they're struggling and they're unable to provide food, it is, you know, it's our obligation to identify what the issues are and make sure we're referring them, as Lena said, either to
Yeah.
a CAP agency that can do the SNAP application, or as Maureen said, if it's, I can't stand in front of my oven and cook anything because my arthritis hurts so bad, then we need to assess them for home care supports and services. It's really just about having the resources to identify what is the barrier. Look at during COVID, we taught thousands of seniors how to use Peapod. I mean, some of it was just the understanding how to use our technology to get some additional food into the home because they could no longer transport to a shopping store. So although the root cause analysis would be wonderful if we have the time and the dollars to do it, I think we should focus on, we're getting that information on intake. They're telling us
Right.
they can't eat. We need to ask them why and follow up with referrals. We need the staffing to do that.
Got it. Okay. So the next big thing, talking about funding, the next big item that was a request to increase state funding, and I'm not entirely sure where this number comes from, but there was a request to increase state funding by $5.5 million a year. I don't, you know, at the moment, I know that my colleagues over at the chairs of the Appropriations Committee say we are over the state spending cap as it is at the current fiscal year. So I don't know what the prospects of that are. I also don't know if that number comes from anywhere in particular, or if there was analysis that came to it, but I didn't want to not talk about that. The understanding that, you know, more funding is always better. And specifically, you know, the AAAs particularly also want more support for service navigation.
Yeah,
Senator, so a little over about a year ago, maybe a little less, the request went in. There was 2.2 million that was allocated to the EMP providers, you know, for the program for this current year. At that time, as that request is being developed, the EMPs came together and the 9 of them came up with, an analysis and data and a figure that came out to 11 million over a 2-year period. So that's where the 5.5 came from. Is that, that work by all the EMPs? So that's where that came out of.
Yeah, that was at your request, Senator. Remember, you said,
Yes.
go back, tell me what the number is, and let's see what we can do about it. And yeah,
I'm okay putting it down as a recommendation. I have no problem with it. I think we can go fight. We can, it's not, it's not within our power of the Human Services Committee to give money. Jillian and I are the chairs of the Human Services Subcommittee on approps, and there's a whole big other conversation about appropriations that we're going to have in context of spending cap and all that. If that number is acceptable to all of the non-executive branch folks on this Zoom, we could put that as a recommendation. I don't have a problem with it, and then we'll just have to see where that lands in terms of the
Senator Lesser.
Yes.
It's Joel Sikorsky here. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Bill said. What we did was we crunched our data from like 2019 on, and we tried to see what waiting lists were out there, how many people were in need. And that's where the 11 million came from, was we were trying to meet the cost of rising food, meet the cost of any waiting lists that were out there, and provide full service to everybody who needed it in an effort to, increase our quality and everything we talked about. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's fine. And we can go and make that case, and we'll make the case to appropriations and see what we can do. I have no problem with that. I will defend the task force members on that, and we'll, if there isn't objection, again, I know that ADS cannot do that, nor would we expect them to, but for the rest of the members, if that's where people are, then I think that's fine.
it's a year-old data, but still, it starts somewhere. If we can get that, we'll be happy.
Okay. Of course, I'm speaking for Representative Gilchrist, but I think we'd be fine. We'll go and ask, and we'll see what we can do. Obviously, there are lots of asks, and I just want to be clear that our support in the context of this subcommittee doesn't mean that you're getting it in the appropriations budget or anything like that. But we can make that recommendation and see if we can make progress on it. Okay. Next, the next one is, I think, the most important from my perspective, which is to address the issue that we've heard about adoption of the federal budget and the specific problems there, and provide one-time funding from OPM to the State Unit on Aging to allow a 3-month carry forward of the program to the following federal fiscal year, the way the LIHEAP program has traditionally operated. I think LIHEAP is not doing that this year, but they've traditionally done that. And to transition to that, we would need a one-time source of funds, but nothing. But so that would be, I think, helpful to helping address that continuing issue. And again, I understand that so that to me, I think would be really helpful, and something that I've already lobbied OPM on, but would think that would be important. Any discussion on that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Recommendation, Senator. If can I have like 30 seconds?
Sure.
I wanted to thank you and Representative Gilchrist for doing this. I unfortunately have to jump off. I appreciate having a voice and all the hard work that everybody on the committee has done. Unfortunately, my wife has been hospitalized for a long time, and they're just moving her right now to a short-term care facility. So I can't stay on the call. I hate to have made it to every meeting and then leave on the most important one. But with apologies, I appreciate all the work everybody's done, and I'm sure that we're in great hands with your recommendations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you for your work, and we wish I think I speak on behalf of all the members. We wishing the very best. Our prayers are with your wife, and I hope she has a swift and full recovery at her care facility, and wishing you very well right now. So thank you for all your contributions to this task force.
Thank you. And I'm available almost all the time, as the SUA and the AAAs are aware. You can contact me anytime if you need any further information or backup. We'll provide that to you. Thank you so much.
Terrific. Okay, so with that, any more discussion on that, on the 3-month carry forward? No. Okay. So with that, any other, that's what I had. And I do want to say, in coming up with that list, I, looked through the minutes, as well as the recommendations that each of the groups had. There were some that did not seem to be achievable because of comments we'd heard back from, the State Unit on Aging or other folks. So I'm hoping that we were able to winnow those down. Are there other things that that folks think we should be considering as well for a task force recommendation? I am not seeing any additional hands. Okay. Well, that's good. It makes my life easier. So with that, you guys all have the
You're muted.
yeah. I'm sorry. Is the screen still shared from Chandra?
No.
Yeah.
Senator, do you want me to reshare my screen?
If you could, that would be lovely.
Of course. The whole
Okay.
thing?
Yes, the whole thing. Okay, so what I would like at this point is to see those and then acknowledge the following tweaks to those recommendations. One, clarify for the first part, clarify that ADS shall report at the end of the year on the feasibility of going to 25%.
Yep.
Two, that we recommend that payment be made from both from SUA to the AAAs, and then from the AAAs to the providers within 30 days, except when precluded by lack of funds. Clarify that for the second bullet point, that we are streamlining the contracting process and streamlining Form 5. That Form 5 is not the contracting process, and then also require an assessment, developing a plan, and reporting on progress and complying with it, rather than just doing it. For the next part, we would clarify that we're asking OPM to fund technology to streamline the process for grant databases, and ask Aging CT to take advantage of any and all funding. And then with regard to the SNAP bullet point, we require that that reporting be by the also include reporting by the State Unit on Aging to the Human Services chairs. I don't know if we had consensus on other ways to.
I'm sorry, Senator Lesser. We're talking about the SNAP enrollment question.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, the State Unit on Aging does not collect that data, so DSS is responsible for, and AG are responsible for that. So I'm not sure how we would get that information.
Well, could you get that from the AAAs? The AAAs would report to you on efforts by the providers to increase SNAP enrollment, which could be through DSS or through the Community Action Agency.
and then you would just turn around and provide a report to us on the AAA's progress? I know you don't-
I think Marie probably has something to say on the feasibility of their side of that, so I'm going to defer to Marie. If Marie, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that we would have to require the CAP agencies to report back to us, which again, not all CAP agencies in my region, there is no CAP agency providing meals. So they would be under no obligation to report to me. And we have very loose partnership with them, but we do not have any contractual requirement to get that information. What would be absolutely outstanding is if we could take all of the individuals enrolled in elderly nutrition programs and compare them to a DSS list that showed SNAP, and we found out who of our client base is not taking part in SNAP, and then we could do some referrals to the CAP agencies for SNAP, or also find out what the barrier to food procurement is for those folks. There's just no way.
Is there a central list of all folks who take advantage of congregate and delivered meals?
There are 5 regional lists. Each one of our area agencies on aging have their own list. Again, with grant technology, a grant database, we would be able to aggregate that data, Senator Lesser. But right now, there is no centralized list of all people who are part of the older Americans Act nutrition programs. But even with that, we wouldn't know whether or not they're SNAP. Many of these clients would be self-reported at best, which would only be accurate for the day that we ask them, and not necessarily accurate at all, depending on the cognitive state, especially of our home delivered clients.
Does the State Unit on Aging have an aggregate report of all the AAAs?
We have the WellSky Aging and Disability Database. It would tell you basically on this. It may include people who are no longer on the program, who have received services throughout the year. So it's a huge list, and may capture people that are not currently active on the program.
And it does not include whether or not they're on SNAP, Lena. It doesn't.
No,
Correct.
Right. So what I'm saying is that if the State Unit on Aging has a list of all of the folks that are receiving ENP services or meals, and we can compare that list to the DSS list, then we have those 2 lists from the state agencies that we can compare that are all inclusive.
Yeah.
DSS has the SNAP list, and then I don't know if SUA has all of the list of the elderly. And I don't know if you can filter through that program to basically eliminate the folks that no longer are on the program.
There could be HIPAA issues too. I'm not, again, that would not be something that AAAs could do, because there's no way DSS is going to give us a list of clients. That's just not going to happen. It would be against the client's, the privilege that they have with the client. They're not going to give that to AAAs. They may do it to SUA. I don't know what the state rules are, but that would not come through to the AAAs.
Right. No, that would be an assignment basically for the state agencies.
Yes.
So what we could do here is we could say, AAA's, SUA, and DSS shall, provide, they should provide a list of who's on elderly nutrition programs to DSS for cross-checking against SNAP eligibility. And then, I don't know, we're going to ask SUA and DSS to have an interagency process to figure out how best to do outreach to those folks who are not on SNAP, but could potentially be.
Right. I was just going to suggest it might be easier to kind of implement this as a going forward. So as new clients come onto the program, we, have that be a focal point of getting them to the appropriate agency that can assist them with an application, providing a more educational outreach related to these components. And then we, I know we certainly do keep track of how many SNAP applications we assist people with each year. So if you needed that number, we can provide it to you, although it would be independent from whether they were in a nutrition program or not. It's just people that live in our region that are we're helping to enroll in SNAP. And I think that anybody that helps with those applications is keeping those kind of numbers as well. So maybe that would be an easier way to start with data collection.
I think, Senator, we can probably ask DSS because I know that there are a lot of new initiatives from a technological perspective that DSS has been working on in terms of sharing databases and sharing information among the executive branches. So maybe it's an ask. Maybe it's not as difficult as we think it is. Maybe they can run a report between them and the State Unit on Aging somehow.
Well, I think DSS could probably run a report. I don't know. They're not on this call, so we don't know. But I think my guess is they probably could run a report. But then the question is, what happens at that point? Do they then turn around to the community action agencies and say, you do the outreach? Like, what happens? Okay, so we know that, Joan Smith in Middletown is eligible for SNAP, but what do we do to, or not, we don't know that she's eligible for SNAP, but we know that she's not on SNAP, but she is receiving home delivered meal or a concrete meal. What do we do at this point to outreach to her? And I don't know, but we could tell DSS, DSS to talk to Sue and come up with a plan.
All right, so that's two different things. I think to actually get somebody on that we think that needs it is something that AAAs do that Marie was talking about in terms of when they do the assessment. In terms of knowing now who's receiving EMP food services and who's on SNAP, that's a report we probably can get through DSS or the Office of Strategic Technologies or something that they've created a couple of years ago that's working on this sort of thing. So those are two different kinds of reports. What we have now, the cross-referencing, and then for the future, the AAAs can make those referrals because they're capturing that information in the Form 5.
Okay. So we're losing some members right now, and those are the changes that I had to what we suggested. So what I would sort of think about, I don't know that we need another meeting, but what we could do is polish the recommendations and send them in an email format to all of the. I would like a vote on this plan if discussion is welcome. But if we're pretty close to potential recommendations for final action, what I'd like to do is take a little bit of time to sort of make sure that we've polished the recommendations and made various typographical and whatnot changes to the draft recommendations. Send it out to all of you for final adoption. If there's a consensus on that. On this call, and if there isn't, then we can either schedule another meeting or announce no recommendations. But does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it does. So I hope in that we'd see a little bit more clarity on number 3, on what is that material change, what constitutes that, and then maybe some recommendations of how that communication would be relayed to the elected officials. What's your vision on that? Just a little more clarity, but maybe that's something we can hammer out in the.
And Allison, do you think that that's something that needs? Again, this is the question I had before when it came up. Is that something? So we can make recommendations to the we're not writing legislation at this point, right? We're making a recommendation to the Human Services Committee that could then be used for legislation. So there's another step. Do you think that should be outlined at this point, or do you think we can leave it vague? And understanding that, that could mean a number of different things. I don't mean to. I don't have a particular preferred outcome. I mean, we can do that. I also want to make sure that we're able to wrap up the subcommittee work and then move to a second phase.
Yep. Okay. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I'll be seeking some clarity on that. So.
Okay. Great. Anything else? All right. Well then, all right. All in favor of the draft recommendations, as sort of understanding that they won't become final recommendations until you've responded by email to what's sent out. Say aye.
Aye.
Actually, is there a motion? Hold on. I'm not sure if I did. Can I have I'm sorry. I'm a little rusty on legislative procedure. Can I have a motion to adopt the draft recommendations subject to emailing final with the changes referenced before. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Lena, second.
Second.
Second by Bill. Any discussion?
I
No
will need
discussion.
to, I will need to abstain.
Aaron will abstain, understand. And then all in favor?
Aye.
All, okay, favor, and then any opposed? Okay, so Chandra, you'll note that there are a couple people who had to drop off, and then we also have an abstention from Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I just want to thank everybody. This has been a long, laborious process. I'm hoping we're making quite a bit of progress on this. Obviously, there are a lot of state budget questions that we're going to be running up against very soon. But I just want to thank all the members for working in good faith to try to improve the elderly nutrition environment for Connecticut seniors. I think we've made quite a bit of progress, and the proof will be in the pudding whether or not we can actually turn some of this stuff into legislation. But I'm particularly grateful to Aaron and for your folks over at ADS for really working with us. And it's all well and good for the state contractors, the nonprofits to ask for the world, but you're actually making real progress in helping us do that. So I'm very, very grateful for you for that, and just thank everybody for their time and their commitment to some of the most vulnerable seniors in our state. Any
Senator?
other? Yeah.
Hi, it's Michelina.
Hi, Michelina.
Hi, I wanted to thank you all as well and just take a couple moments if I could. I told you that we were transitioning to the Meals on Wheels at home, and that I would let you know how that went. That was a very easy transition. I got a phone call, I'd say within 45 minutes of our leaving the meeting last time, and got set up. Apparently there were no additional questions or anything. You were talking about that, what was it, that Form 5 intake or whatever. So apparently whatever we had done before COVID is still what's in order for that right now. And so it just made for a very smooth transition. I do miss certain things, but we knew that we would not be getting juices or soups. What we did notice, my mother's lost 7 pounds this month with no other change. As a matter of fact, I've been giving her a little more food. That basically the entrees are the same, but the sides are considerably smaller than in the congregant setting, probably about 75% smaller. So I'm starting to subsidize a little bit, fill in with some more vegetables and carbohydrates. But the other thing you were talking about with SNAP and all, a lot of us are basically no tech, low tech. And so with the delivery system that you have and with the congregant setting, knowing how many people are basically there, a flyer given to every participant, just to let them know what's available, especially since a lot of us signed up more than 5 years ago. And so our financial circumstances may have changed, and where we never would have thought that we would have qualified before might qualify now, some of those other programs. So you might think about going a little low tech for your communications with the participants.
Thank you. That is super helpful information, and I tend to agree that so we just have to do some simple outreach to folks to tell them that they qualify. And there may be people who are too proud. There may be people who have all sorts of other reasons for not going on SNAP. But if you don't know that you're eligible because it didn't occur to you, we should address that, and maybe a flyer will be enough. Thank you for your participation, Nicola. It's great to have your voice.
My pleasure.
And I want to particularly thank you for being here and for sharing your family's experience. And I just say that's really important. Anything else while we have you?
I think we should thank Chandra for all
Oh
of
my
her hard
goodness,
work.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Chandra deserves the
absolutely.
medal. And Chandra is worth her weight
For
in
weight in
gold.
gold.
So we are the entire Human Services Committee would crush into a volcano without her. So, thank you, Chandra. And while we had this, I have multiple computers in front of me because we had a terrible technical meltdown at the start of the meeting today, and Chandra unexpectedly had to also come and fix that. So I'm also particularly grateful for her for that. So thank you for that, and keep being you. Anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Motion by Lena, second by
Second.
Marie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. See you guys.
All right.